Welcome back to John Huss and John Wycliffe, Part 2 of Predestination. John Wycliffe. We'll return now to Dr. Wycliffe, whose strictures led me into this digression. What little more than he intimates in the citation given above, he delivered, it seems, and more plainly and peremptorily elsewhere, among the 62 articles, which I'd love to have the other 60 or so articles laid to his charge by Thomas Natter, commonly called Thomas of Walden, who flourished about the year 1409, and for which that writer refers to the volume and chapter of Wycliffe's works in these three: that all things come to pass by fatal necessity, that God cannot make the world otherwise than it is made, and that God cannot do anything which he does not do. And of course, Augustus Toplady says this is fatalism with a witness. But Wycliffe also says, in the sound in the article of gratuitous pardon and justification by the alone death and righteousness of Jesus Christ, the merit of Christ, says he, is of itself sufficient to redeem every man from hell. Sufficient is the key word there. He doesn't say efficient, he says sufficient. Because efficient is a different word than sufficient. Of course it's sufficient, but it's also efficient. And efficient means it's effectual. Sufficient means it's possible. It is possible only that it's sufficient in that its value is infinite, and merit-wise could, if designed, redeem everyone. Doesn't mean he's saying it does. It is to be understood of a sufficiency of itself without any other concurring cause. All that follow Christ, being justified by his righteousness, shall be saved as his offspring. Quote, has been already observed and proved that he had a very high notions of the inevitability of necessity, by which he supposed every event is governed, yet he did not enthusiastically sever the end from the means. Witness his own words: though all future things do happen necessarily, God wills that good things happen to his servants through the efficacy of prayer. Upon the whole, it is no wonder that such a profligate factor for Popery and Arminianism as Peter Heelan should incidentally affirm that Wycliffe's field had more tares than wheat, and his books more heterodoxes than sound Catholic doctrine. I would like to repeat the other part, though, up here, that the prayer of the reprobate prevaileth for no man, number one. Number two, all things that happen do come absolutely of necessity. Our Lord says he affirmed that such or such an event, this is number 3, that our Lord says he affirmed that such and such an event should come to pass. Its accomplishment, therefore, is unavoidable. The antecedent is infallible. By parity of argument, the consequence is so too. For the consequent is not in the power of a created being, for as much as Christ affirmed so many things before they were brought to pass, neither did Christ pre-affirm anything accidentally. Seeing then that his affirmation was not accidental but necessary, it follows that the event affirmed by him must be necessary likewise. This argument, adds Wycliffe, receives additional strength by observing that in what way soever God may declare his will by his after discoveries of it in time, still his determination concerning the event took place before the world was made. That is, the event will surely follow. The necessity, therefore, of the antecedent holds no less irrefragably for the necessity of the consequent, and who can either promote or hinder the inference, that is, that this was decreed of God before the foundation of the world. And I would like to quickly run over to a man named Thomas Bradwardine laments the Pelagianism of his own times in terms but too applicable to the present. What multitudes, O Lord, at this day join hands with Pelagius in contending for free will and in fighting against thy absolutely free grace and against that spiritual champion for grace, the Apostle Paul. By how many is thy unmerited grace looked upon with scornful abhorrence, while they proudly insist that free will alone is sufficient to salvation, or if they make use of the word grace and slightly pretend to believe that grace is necessary. To what purpose is this pretense, while they boast of its being in power of free will to lay thy grace under obligation, thus making grace itself no longer grace, but representing thee as selling it instead of giving it? Some, more haughty than even Lucifer, are not content with barely lifting themselves to an equality with thee, but are most daringly desirous to govern and control thee, who art the King of kings. Such are they who dread not to affirm that even in a common action with their own will walks first as an independent mistress, and that thy will follows after like an obsequious handmaid, that they themselves go foremost like sovereign lords, while thou walkest behind them like a hired servant, that they issue their orders as kings, and that thou like an implicit subject actest according to the imperial nod of their determining will. But such is the words of Thomas Bradwardine. We will go to Isaiah 46, verse 9, where God says, "Remember the former things of old. I am God and there is none else. I am God and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning, from ancient times, things that are most not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand. I will do all my pleasure." And again, Ephesians, yeah, who worketh all things after the counsel of his own will. But Revelations 1:4, 1:4. Oh, thou art worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power, for thou hast created all things, and for thy pleasure they are and were created. Thank you for listening.